name's Mario from Nicaragua.
Hi everyone, we can get started now. I'm sure we've all got things to do this evening. Sorry for the delay, just waiting for a few more people to come through. I'd like to start off with saying thanks for attending. I know it's strange times at the moment. Obviously, we'd like to do this in person and actually organise a meet up, have a drink, pizza, etc. But what can we do? We're in lockdown. Yeah, I appreciate a lot of you have moved things around to make it tonight, so I appreciate that as well. Today we've got Roham from ASOS. He's a lead engineer down there. He's on the screen there. He'll be taking us through a chat about pair programming. I'm sure we're all familiar with pair programming. Obviously there's a lot of ways that we can sort of apply that to each development team that we work within. Roham's just going to go through what he's been doing at ASOS, potentially another company prior to that as well. Before I do hand over to Roham, quickly, if any of you are interested in speaking in the future, please do get in touch afterwards. We're always looking for speakers. Hopefully we'll get another remote one booked in next month, depending on how long lockdown lasts for. We might do a few more. Hopefully we'll get some face-to-face time, organise something later on in the year, but we'll see. If I can ask you all if you've got any questions, there will be a Q&A session at the end, so please hold them to the end, and I'm sure we can have a quick discussion, chat about everyone's experiences, and we'll go from there. So yeah, that's it. Over to Roham, and hopefully you'll enjoy. I'll put myself on mute now.
Hi everyone. Thanks, mate. Thanks, Reece. Thanks everyone for joining. This talk, as Reece mentioned, this is about pair programming, and I'm going to start with the content of this presentation or talk. I'm going to start with a brief introduction of myself, and then I split the whole content into 4 sections: the what, who, why, and how. The what's going to be around what is pair programming and a bit of background. The who are the roles and the parts that each role plays within the pair programming, and then the whys is pros and cons and why is pair programming important, and the how is going to be around how to implement it and what are the different methods of pair programming. At the end, we're going to get to Q&A. So a little bit of introduction of myself. My name is Roham. As you can see in my photo, that's before lockdown. I didn't have any facial hair at the time, but 4 months in lockdown could give me a new look. I've been a software engineer and I've been coding for around 20 years now. And one of the reasons is because my father was a software engineer, and he still is actually. He's kind of running the family, and I learned a lot from him. So until 4 years ago, I was a contractor, and because of that, I was lucky enough to try different industries and see in action how pair programming could work in different environments. But since 4 years ago, my last contract role was as Evil Genius, and after that, I was fortunate enough to be part of Read Exhibition, ASOS, and I'm starting a new position at Mortgage Engine next month as the lead software engineer. So that's brief introduction about myself. Let's get to the content of pair programming, and let's start with what pair programming is. Let's start with a bit of a background, which is related to XP programming, which is XP principle, which is extreme programming principles. Pair programming is nothing new. It's been around for a long time, and it's been part of the principles of XP, which envisioned by Kent Beck in 90s. So you might ask what XP is. XP is extreme programming, which is a set of standards and principles to make sure that you do a good software application or you write a great code. It does a stress on exchanging information, clarity, response, collaboration, a lot of communication and consideration. So let's get back to pair programming after this quick background. As I just mentioned, it has been around for a long time, but what is it? What is pair programming? So in theory, it has a very, very simple definition. The practice of pairing up to work on programming tasks. So two people, two engineers, it doesn't necessarily need to be two software engineers. It could be QA engineers or platform engineers, DevOps engineers. Any two engineers could pair up to do one single task together. Each could have their own equipments, or they could share one, of course, because now there's, after lockdown, a lot of people working remotely, sharing equipments wouldn't be an option anymore. But at any time when people go back to the offices, one of the ways is to share equipments rather than having their own one. It is now widely adopted by a lot of organizations, and it is because of a lot of benefits that it provides to teams, which we're going to get to that in later slides. There was a survey, there were two surveys done, which I found the stats and result over the internet. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the surveys themselves, but it had very, very interesting results out of the survey. So 96% of the surveyors said they enjoy working as a pair more than when they work on their own. And 97% of them mentioned that they have much more confidence in their code comparing when they were programming alone. There was another survey which happened after a workshop around pair programming, and at the end of the workshop, 75% of the classroom mentioned that they believe when they're pairing, they can tackle any any complex code, which shows the confidence on the result of the pair program. It is a bit slower when you develop as a pair. It could be up to 15% slower when comparing to individual works, but it could produce up to 25% less defects, bugs detected, which is great. So that's the basic definition of pair programming and what it is. So basically, two developers working together. I'm gonna stop saying developers, two engineers working together to provide one piece of code or task. So what are the roles? I'm gonna start with an example which I might use when I'm describing the roles. So we have two roles, navigator and driver. The driver is the person who drives. The navigator, imagine if you're sitting in a car and your smartphone is switched off, or you don't have a phone, you don't have access to digital navigation. So you have your friend next to you who has a big A to Z map, and he or she is telling you where to go. And that's the scenario. So we have a driver and we have a navigator. So who's a driver and what the driver should do? The driver, the main act of the driver is to write code and listen to navigator instruction, what to write and where to go. The driver has to ask questions whenever the instruction that coming from navigator is not clear. So if navigator says at some point turn right, it's not a clear instruction. You have to object that and you have to make sure you get clear instruction. And the driver should offer alternative solutions if he or she believes that there are better ways of doing a specific task. But if they get to a disagreement and after a few discussions they cannot agree which solution or which way is better to go, they have to always defer back to the navigator. He has the final say. But another very important role of the driver is to make sure the code is clean. Writing code is driver's responsibility. Following the right principles to provide a clean code is driver's responsibility. So that's very, very, very important. And on the other side, the navigator dedicates the code that has to be written and what has to be written. And also he or she has to explain why we've taken a specific solution or a pattern or a specific way to tackle a problem. The navigator has to be very, very clear about that. And he or she has to make sure that the driver sticks to small tasks in hand. So if, for example, if driving for 4 hours, the driver doesn't need to know what's coming in 2 hours' time. The driver has to focus on the road ahead. And that's the navigator's responsibility to make sure that happens. But at the same time, he has to see the full picture. The navigator should outline the note, should outline and note down high-level tasks, any issues, any refactor that could happen as a result of the code that is being written. And after that small task in hand is done, they have to refer back to it and do the refactor or fix the issues or whatever needs to be. And it's an ongoing code review, which is very, very important. So as you all might know, one of the steps in development lifecycle is code review. So after you finish in a task, if you're not following pair programming, and if you follow Git flow feature toggling, then you have to create a pull request, ask someone in your team potentially to review your code. With pair programming, because someone is constantly doing your code review, you don't need that step in future anymore. But that's the navigator's responsibility to make sure that that code review is constantly happening, and he or she has to always pay attention. He has to be engaged and engaged all the time. But there are some few things that both driver and navigator should do as the best practice. So they both have to actively take part in programming. We're going to get to the different methods of pair programming later on, which we're going to talk about how to actually set up the pair programming as like a ping pong method, or different methods that come with pair programming. But they have to actively take part in pair programming and switch the roles as frequent as possible. They should always avoid trying to be right. This is not about trying to be right. This is about producing a clean code and a better code. So instead, they have to try to embrace their roles, stick to their roles, and that automatically come with the avoiding to be right, to be honest. They both have to intervene if other pair is quiet, which is very, very, very important, because disengagement could lose all the benefits of pair programming. So if you feel tired, if you feel your pair is tired or disengaged, you have to always intervene. You have to tell them, look, do you want to take a break? Do you want to continue pairing? And that engagement is very, very important, because if you don't, you're going to lose all the values. And communication. Communication, in my view, is not only a big factor of pair programming, but in cross-functional teams is one of the most important things. But it is even more important in pair programming. So communicate as much as you can, as clear as you can. Another thing is, don't hog the keyboard. It's not yours. You're sharing a keyboard, you're sharing equipment. Even if you're having multiple equipments, you have to take turns and switch your roles frequently. That helps with the engagement as well. And follow the best practices for TDD and solid. To be honest, this is more related to the driver, because the driver has to make sure that he or she is writing a clean code, but because the navigator is constantly code reviewing, they have to make sure that the right practices are followed. Don't ignore the breaks. Again, goes hand in hand with the engagement. Have to make sure that you take breaks. Don't do long hours. If you feel your pair or yourself is tired, make sure you communicate that clearly. Make sure you take a break. And trust each other, which has to come doesn't matter if you're pairing or not, you have to always trust your team members. So let's go to get to the point of why pair programming is so such a buzzword nowadays, and why it's so important for the team, and what are the benefits and what are the disadvantages. I'm going to start with the disadvantages, with the cons, because we could talk about them, we could make sure we have a mitigation for them. So it could complicate a simple task. So if you just fixing a small quick bug, or if you implementing a feature or feature toggle, which could be maximum 5 or 6 lines of code, or if you updating Confluence for a technical description of something, you not necessarily need to pair on that. If you do, it could complicate that task, and it could produce unnecessary discussions, which doesn't need to happen. So you have to make sure to understand when to pair and when not to pair. This is something that we're going to talk about it a bit later, but that's something that you have to agree within a team as a whole, to make sure that you define what things you can pair on and what things you shouldn't pair on. It doesn't necessarily eliminate the tower of knowledge. What is a tower of knowledge? Tower of knowledge is one of the big issues in a lot of companies, which we do have experts. And when I say expert, I don't mean technically expert. I mean a domain knowledge expert, someone who has a greater understanding about a piece of a system that no one else in the team does, which creates a lot of issues, bottlenecks, blockers. If that person, for any reason, is not available due to holiday, changing job, or for any reason, that person is not available, that's instant blocker for the team if something happens. So that's tower of knowledge. And pair programming is not the solution necessarily for tower of knowledge. What are the examples? For example, legacy systems, or the systems that are, or the teams that already have built that tower of knowledge. You wouldn't be able to eliminate that tower of knowledge with pair programming. You need something else. You need to sit down as a team, plan, see what's missing and what you need to do as a team to eliminate that type of knowledge. You cannot do everything with pair programming. It's not a super tool to sort out all your issues within a team. So again, you have to make sure why you're using pair programming and what you shouldn't, on what stuff you shouldn't use pair programming. And if the pair, as I mentioned before, if the pair are not equally engaged, you're going to lose a lot of benefits of pair programming. If I'm a navigator and we don't communicate well enough, if I disengage and start looking at my phone, it feels like someone's actually coding on its own, and I'm just checking my phone. So it's just, you lose all the benefits. You're not going to get the knowledge sharing. You're not going to get the constant peer review. And nothing's going to happen. So why bother? That's why the communication is very important. You have to make sure you always engage. If you don't feel like it, don't do it. If it doesn't work for your team, don't do it. Discuss it. Find why it's not working for you. You shouldn't always apply pair programming to everything and want a good output, basically. Another thing is, more coffee and pairing is not always the answer, as I just mentioned. So you cannot tackle everything with pair programming. If your pair is tired, if something is not working, if there is the chemistry between the team is not working and the pairing is not actually helpful for the team, just forcing it is not gonna work, and you're gonna lose the benefits again. And similarly to simple tasks, the complex code or complex task, again, do you want to pair or do you want to discuss it as a team? Find out why it's complex. Does it need to break down? It doesn't matter how great your refinement sessions are. It doesn't matter how descriptive your stories and your tasks are. You're still gonna get to a situation that you get to a complex code, or you get to a situation that you didn't think about before. And in that scenario, sometimes it's better to step back and rethink, get engaged with your team members, make sure you discuss it with everyone, and then decide what you want to do next. So based on the cons, we have to understand that pair programming is not for everything, and you cannot apply to everything. If you do, it's going to come with its disadvantages, and you're not going to get benefits out of it. But before we get to the benefits of pair programming, there's a big misconceptions about pair programming, which I heard a lot in the past years, especially from the management level, which when you mention pair programming, constantly it represents a costly practice. And in the first glance, it might make sense because two people doing one person job, so it's gonna, if it's not double the cost, it's still gonna increase the cost. But that's not true, because just coding is not the only step in your development lifecycle. Your development lifecycle has few different steps, and by pairing, you're gonna improve other steps. You're gonna speed up your development lifecycle, your CI/CD. You could reduce your tech debt, your bugs, your live incidents, and you're gonna have your knowledge sharing within the team, which has a lot of values in terms of the saving time and cost. So overall, you're gonna gain a lot of benefits from pair programming. So let's get to the benefits. It increases code quality, and it is easy to measure, which we're going to get in the latest in the later slides. But it does increase your code quality. It is a great tool for knowledge sharing. I'm going to use an example here. For example, if you have a feature which is a 7 days work needed to be done for that feature, and this is just an example, I'm not suggesting that you have to apply that when you're working on a feature like that. But if you keep switching your pairs every other day, almost every engineer in your team gonna get a understanding of that feature that's being developed. So it's very great for knowledge sharing, and same for better transfer of skills, because nowadays in cross-functional teams, the team skill set matters, not individual skill set. So the team has to have a complete skill set that could tackle the issues or the features or the product that they have within that team. So if I'm working with a senior engineer who's much better in DevOps than me, just pairing up is gonna speed up the transfer of skills. Reduction in coordination efforts. So two people pairing and coordinating is gonna be, of course, easier and faster than individually doing that. Improved resiliency of a pair to interruptions, which again, this means that if you have, if a pair is working on a piece of work, if something pops up, a major incident happens, or if a meeting happens that one of the pair has to go to the meeting, they could just agree on some steps to be finished, and one of the pair could switch off and go and do what needs to be done and come back and join again. So it's kind of constant work, which has less interruptions. And it is very, very useful for onboarding. Of course, it's going to be fast onboarding. If you have a new joiner in your team, make sure you make them pair with all of your team members, and they're going to get the technical skills, the tools, the knowledge, the domain knowledge much, much quicker than throwing them a task or conference page to read up. Interview experience. This has been done by a lot of companies at the moment, which one of the interview steps is a pairing exercise, which you give the candidate a test and you pair with the candidate. And what happens is, because the technical skills of the candidate is not the only important thing, you have to make sure the candidate fits your team. And by pairing with a candidate, you know how they work, you know how they communicate, you know how they express their logic to you, and you understand a lot of values from a candidate comparing if you just do a telephone interview or face-to-face interview. There are two different methods being done, which I'm going to talk about later slides when we're doing about the methods, which more popular in interviews nowadays. The next one is the elimination of code review, as I mentioned. So if you're doing constant code review while you're pairing, you don't need that code review step anymore. Especially if you're doing trunk-based development, it's just gonna make your CI/CD much quicker. It can increase employee satisfaction. So now this is one of the titles that I don't like, but I couldn't find any alternative for it. Employee satisfaction, as you know, has a lot of factors playing a part in it. One of those factors is basically the team satisfaction. So if you are closer with your team, if you know your team better, so what pair programming does is just bonding people together and makes teams closer with each other, makes teams understanding each other better. And that could play a factor in one of the things that could have an effect on employee satisfaction. But by just pair programming, if you expect by just pair programming your employee satisfaction is going to go up, that's not true. But I couldn't find a better title to put in there. It improves collaboration and communication skills. Again, you all, because one of the big factors is communication. And by keep doing that on a daily basis, you're going to improve your communication skills with your teammates, facial expressions, body behaviors, how your teammates express their logic, express their thoughts, which helps communicating with your team members much easier and better. Produce more than twice the code than individuals. So this, again, one of those titles that I personally don't like much, but again, I couldn't find an alternative for it. So I put it like this, but I'm trying to change it for later on. So what it means is when two individuals working separately, you're not always going to be coding. You're going to be involved with emails, meetings, a lot of time thinking about solutions, and a lot of time being disturbed by other conversations. So the stats shows that when you're pairing, you actually code more than comparing when you coding individually. So these are the benefits of pair programming. We discussed the misconception and the disadvantages. So now let's talk about how to apply pair programming and what are the practices and methods and stuff that are important to consider when you want to start using pair programming or apply pair programming to your teams. So we want to talk about different use cases, and these use cases are gonna be these different three combinations: expert, novice, and novice. And when we talk about expert and novice, again, it's not only the technical excellence of the individuals. It is the domain knowledge, how well they know the company, their stakeholders, the team. All these play a factor to identify a person as an expert, as a novice. Having said that, we have 6 different methods when we want to apply pair programming. These, I mean, there are more than 6, but these are the most common and most popular methods. The first one is unstructured pairing. The good example for that is when you go as a team for a hackathon idea, or if you're tackling a lot of tech debt in a sprint, or as a day, if the team decide let's just tackle tech debt today, and that's when you could apply unstructured pairing. It, as the name says, it is not a structured. You could do however you want. You could switch pairs. You could just be in one room and pair as a team. So one person is going to be the driver, and then the rest of the team could be collective navigators. You could do however works for the team to tackle that specific thing that you want to work on. I have an example for tech debt and hackathon both. So in Reed Engineer, when I was working for Reed exhibition, we did a unstructured pairing on hackathon, and we did the same in ASUS to tackle a lot of tech debt, and it was very, very successful, very quick, very successful, and both of those examples happened in one day. The driver navigator, which the most common use case for it is expert. So the driver is an expert and navigator is an expert, and it's the most common use case that we discuss about the roles as well. And you could apply to a lot of scenarios, mostly on your daily work, pulling a ticket, working on a story or task or a code. Backseat navigator, which the most popular use case is novice expert. So the driver is novice and expert is the navigator. And that's why I said the technical excellence is not that important. This method applies in interviews a lot. So the candidate, although he could be very expert technically, but in that scenario, that the test that he's going to take and the environment that he's in and the equipment that he's using, he collectively he's a novice, and the person who's pairing with him as an interviewer is the expert who's going to take a back seat. So they're going to have a discussion about the test and how to do it and how much time they have in an interview, and then the candidate who's a driver starts cracking on. They're still going to communicate. The backseat navigator all the time engaged, observing, but is not as is not going to apply any logic. Is not going to tell the driver where to go exactly. He or she could give a hint to the driver, but it's not going to. He or she is not going to tell the driver exactly what to do, because that defeats the purpose. Tour guide, which is most use case for tour guide is expert novice. So the driver is going to be expert and the navigator is going to be novice. It's most common use case for that is onboarding. So when you have a new team member, tour guide is very, very useful. So the driver knows where it's going. It's going to show around the code structure, where the code sits, where it's located, where is the repo, where are the documentation, how many projects, blah, blah, blah. So the tour guide, the driver is expert and is a tour guide. Ping pong pairing, which is one of my favorites, is the common use case is could be expert, could be expert novice. It doesn't really matter. Any combination could apply to ping pong pairing, and it strictly follows TDD principle. And the way it works is, as you know, TDD is red, green, refactor, right? So I start as a pair, I start writing a failing test, my pair passes it, make sure it's green, and then refactors. And then my pair writes a new test, make sure it's red, I make sure it passes, and then I refactor. And it's just keep switching the roles, makes it very, very interesting. And it is very by nature, it forces the communication and engagement, and it is very, very useful. And distributed pair programming, which kind of our new normal. They call it DPP, or remote pair programming, which is a way when your team is distributed or working remotely and they're not co-located. But then it can apply with other methods in parallel. So when you distribute it, you can still do ping pong pairing. You could still be a tour guide. You could still apply driver navigator. So it could happen in parallel with other methods. In Read exhibition, what we did was we used to do a driver navigator method very strictly. We used to do 100% pairing every day, and it was just amazing. It was very, very, very performant. At ASOS, it was a bit different. We were trying different things and trying to find out what suits the team better. We tried ping pong, we tried driver navigator, and we tried unstructured pairing, and we kind of keep changing to see what fits the team better. But I think driver navigator works the best. Ping pong worked the best in ASOS. So these are the methods, but there are a few more points that I would like to make, which are very, very important when you want to apply pair programming. And these are coming from my own experience. To start with, I've mentioned it before, pair programming should not be forced on individual and on teams. The team should collectively agree and see why they are going to apply pair programming. They have to see the value, and without seeing the value, it's not going to work. If they don't see the benefits, it's not going to work. If it has to be forced, you're going to lose the benefits. You have to know how to measure, which I mentioned in previous slides. We're going to get there. Measuring is very important. So what you could do is you could, if you follow in sprint or Kanban or a Scrum Kanban or Scrumban, you either have sprints or iterations or a period which you do your reports based on. So you have your lead time, you have your cycle time. You have to start measuring your number of defects, bugs, and incidents that you have on average in a period. And you have to start counting how many tech that you produce on average in a period of time. And then when you apply pair programming, you could see if any of those are being improved or not. When to choose the pairs, there's no written stone, there's no rule. You have to find what works better for the team. Example, at Read exhibition, we were doing it after stand-up. Straight away after stand-up, we had a tech huddle, and we were choosing what tickets to pick up and who's going to pair on them. And as I mentioned, we were strictly following pair programming on daily basis, 100% of the time, and every day we were switching the pairs. So it might sound a bit aggressive, but it worked very, very well. And because it wasn't forced and the team were willing to do that, it worked very, very good for my team when I was in Read exhibitions. So it's up to the team. Agree what time works better for the team. I suggest after stand-up, before you pick up the tickets and discuss what you want to do, and then choose your pairs. What to pair on and when to pair, again, is something that you have to agree as a team. As we mentioned before, you might not want to pair on small tasks, or you might not want to pair on the complicated tasks, or you might want to decide that let's pair on everything. It's just something that you have to decide as a team, that what things you want to pair on. Sometimes you're just going to say, we're not going to pair at all. We're just going to use it when we get to complicated issues. We want to do it when we get a new member for onboarding. We want to do it for knowledge sharing and transfer of skills. but we don't want to pair all the time, which is absolutely fine. You have to find what works best for you and for your team. When to pair, again, the same thing. Small tasks, big tasks, what's working for you. But what I suggest is you have to try it and then find if it's working for you or if it doesn't work for you and why it doesn't work for you, and iterate on it and try to improve it like anything else as we do in Agile world. So try, iterate, and improve. Make sure you keep doing that. And check in frequently. Again, this is because you are not going to have that code review steps. And especially if you're doing the trunk-based development, if you don't check in your code frequently, you're going to block other people. So that's about some extra points that I wanted to mention. But let's get to our new normal, how to be COVID safe. Basically, how to do distributed pair programming or remote pair programming. What it is whatever we mentioned until now and we learned until now, still gonna be the same. Nothing's gonna change. Doesn't matter if you co-located or if you distributed, nothing that you have learned so far is gonna change. We have to just emphasize on a few more things because then they play even more important part when you are doing it remotely. And the first thing is communication. Again, I cannot stress how important this is. Communication and clear communication is very important. I do personally like my webcam on whenever I'm pairing, because I believe that facial expression is very important when you are communicating with your pair, but it's individual choice and team choices. Communication is very important. Have the right equipment. Again, it's not only for if you want to apply pair programming, working remotely it is very important to have the right equipment. So you have to have the right internet, right connection speed. You have to have the right headset if you want to use headset, right monitor, right chair, right equipment, and then use the right software if you want to pair. And that is very, very important. Don't do it long hours. It could be a bit tiring if you're doing it remotely, and you might get a bit bored quicker. You might get disengaged quicker. So again, it's both individuals who are pairing together responsibility to make sure if they're bored, if they think there's disengaged, if they think it's not working on that specific day, just tell your pair, look, I'm a bit tired, my mind's somewhere else. I cannot pair today. And it's totally fine. It's totally fine. If you cannot pair on a specific task on a specific day, it's fine. You shouldn't force it because you're going to lose the benefits again. There are different methods that you could apply distributed pair programming. You could do terminal sharings, which I haven't done myself. You could screen sharing, which I'm sure a lot of us done already, and collaborative code editing. And there are a lot of tools available online for free or paid. And I'm sure all of you work with a lot of tools on this matter already. I'll just put some of most popular ones here: Zoom, Teams, Slack, and TeamViewer for the screen sharing, and Cloud9, CodeMV, Teletype for Atom, Remote Club for Sublime, Visual Studio Live Share, Code Sandbox, Code Anywhere, and Code Pen. These are the tools that could be used, and I've used most of them for when I'm pairing remotely. I really hope it was a useful presentation around pair programming. I thank you for your time, and I thank you for listening to me, and I would be happy to answer if you have any questions.
I'll just chip in quickly, sorry. Thanks a lot for that, Roham. Obviously, I'm not technical myself, so a lot of that went over my head, but it's always good to listen to you guys, and it is really insightful from a recruiter's point of view, and it helps, obviously, when speaking to you guys about potential jobs or helping you recruit in the future. But I think there's a few guys in the chat, actually, I've been looking through. I think Stuart's got a few questions, potentially, maybe Camille as well. There is no really organised way of doing this. If you do want to just maybe introduce yourself, guys, we'll have to go one at a time, obviously. But yeah, feel free to chip in and ask, fire some questions away.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so my name is John. I've got a question with regards to how you rotate the team. I think during his presentation, he talked about how you rotate the team. Now, does that not sort of defeat the purpose? Say, for instance, I have two experts or an expert. So using one of the methods he talked about, say I have two of those working on a ticket or maybe a greenfield project, and say 2 weeks down the line, I now change that team. Will that not be, say, going back to square one if I have two new people or two new team members working on a different ticket on that project? Does that not sort of defeat the purpose, or do I just take just one member of that team and add somebody else? How will I manage that process? If that makes sense.
It totally does make sense, and thanks for your question. It's a very good question. Maybe I made a mistake when I was talking. Maybe by mistake I mentioned team. I didn't mean in different teams. I mean everyone within one team. So when you're rotating within your team. So, and what happens is, for example, if I'm pairing with you today, I'm going to continue pairing with you tomorrow, for an example, and then I switch off and someone else joins you on a specific feature or the ticket that you are working, if it's taken long. And then you two are transferring that knowledge, and the other person is going to get to speed. And then the day after, you're going to switch off and someone else is going to join. This is one of the ways. But sometimes you might want to just keep people working on a ticket. If the ticket is small in 1 day or a couple of days, you can just keep people on the same, same pair on the same ticket. But you have to make sure that if something comes around later, similar to that ticket or in the same domain, you don't want to put the same pair on that ticket. You want to make sure that you kind of shuffle the pairs.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Hiya. Just had a quick question. So you talked about some various statistics and surveys that have done in industry. What did you find in practice, say at ASOS? How did you find that it improved the velocity of the team in real world stats?
So I'm gonna, thanks for the question to start with. I'm gonna start with read exhibition because I saw a lot of value in there. I saw that we managed to get rid of code review completely, and we quickly managed to mature the team to go towards trunk-based development and a faster development life cycle. And we got to a point that people wanted to pair all the time, even on the small tasks. Doesn't matter even if it's an hour job, two people gonna pair on it, do it quickly in an hour job. The management was willing to accept the risk of doing that. And it was very, very useful. And we had because of the same benefits as I mentioned, we had a very close team because of the same reason. We were always keep switching the pairs, and the team was always working together.
Did you measure that at all? Pardon? Did you measure it at all?
We measured it through the defects, as I mentioned. One of the biggest ways to measure it is to do it through your defects, bugs, and incidents, and the number of tech deaths that you get produced in a period of time. Sure. And it was I don't remember the stats on top of my head, but we had like one incident in 3 months for a feature that we released.
Okay, that's impressive.
Yeah, so it was pretty good. And we were using, so another thing that you could use is there are tools that measure your code quality, like SonarQube, which we were using at ASOS and with Exhibition both. And you could see when you start pairing, your code quality starts increasing straight away.
Okay.
I have a question. What would be the key things, could be good or bad, to look for in a candidate when he's doing pair programming in an interview?
Yeah, so in an interview, the things that pair programming could help you to flag out is how the candidates communicate with you, and how they can actually express, not express, basically try to explain their logic behind what they're doing. You could see their communication skills. You could make them to feel a bit more relaxed when you're pairing. What we did at ASUS and in Read exhibitions, although different people doing it differently, but I really liked ping pong approach, which is not very popular for interviews, but I really liked it because you could see how exactly it's going to work in the real life when that person joins you in the team. So what we did was, when the candidate was pairing with me, I started being the driver. So, you know, in the interview, people might not be familiar with your equipments, with your keyboard, with your shortcuts, and they might be a bit stressed. So I asked them to be the navigator and tell me what to write. You don't need to worry about the code quality. I just want to know how you think and what's your logic to pass this test. And then they get a bit more relaxed, they get a bit more engaged with the interview process. And then if, for example, if the time for that pairing exercise is 1 hour, then after half an hour, you could switch the roles. Then you could say, okay, now you sit and be a driver, and then we could discuss how to go forward. And by that time, you know how the person logic works. You have made the most foundation of the test, so you don't mind actually telling the driver what to do.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions at all, guys?
Maybe I have a question. Which area you recommend pair programming? Or for instance, what you said in legacy program code, it seems not be valuable, but for example, which area, for instance, can be valuable for pair programming? But because I think not all area could bring values. I'm not sure. Do you understand what I mean?
I think I understand. Let me try to answer, and if you think it's not the right answer, let me know, and then we try again. So what things we cannot apply pair programming on, and what things we can apply pair programming on? It's again, it's not written on a stone. It's something that the teams have to discover themselves. As I mentioned at Read, we had different teams which were doing it differently. My team, we were pairing on every single task that we had during the day. And it was fun. Everyone enjoyed it. But at ASUS, that was not the case. It wasn't working. We had some strong character individuals which they didn't like to pair all the time. They needed that me time, which is completely understandable. That's why I'm saying it should not be forced. People have different characters, and sometimes they want to work on their own. Sometimes actually they don't want to pair at all. So you have to see what works for your team the best. They suggest that do not pair on small tasks, and they suggest make sure you understand the complex code, and if it does need to be broken down before you start pairing on it. But again, it's something that you have to find out within your team. My suggestion is you have to make an agreement, some principles in place, try it and see if it's working or not. And then if it's not working, try to find out why it's not working. It might not be actually working for a team, which we had. So in ASUS, I was at some period, I was actually working with two teams. One of the teams, it just didn't work for them. So what we did was we started pairing with the QA engineers, with the software engineers at some points every now and then to be able to run our system integration tests, which was very useful and successful. But pairing software engineers together all the time just didn't work. With the other team that I was working with, it was absolutely fine. So no one had an issue to do that.
Thanks.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, exactly. It was my question. I might have also a second question. In which area you see the best value of pair programming from your experience?
The best value for me is personally, I'm a very I trust my teams all the time, and I think everything has to be a team activity, and I think that brings the best out of the people in the team and the team itself. So one of the best value that I experienced in myself was getting the team together, make the team trust each other, and they were happily working together. We made that team bonding, which was very, very important. And that was one of the best values, and knowledge sharing. It's very, very important. I have been into situations that knowledge sharing could block teams for days, and having that knowledge transferred within the team is very, very important. Not everyone, of course, some person in the team or some people in the team gonna be a bit more expert in a specific area in the system, and that's fine. That's gonna happen, and that's totally fine. But everyone else in the team also knows about that piece of work, which then they might take a bit longer to fix if something happens, but they're not gonna be blocked.
Does anyone have any final questions at all? Conscious of the time, obviously, but if there are any more questions that they would like to ask, feel free to fire away. If not, we can wrap things up. Okay, sounds good. No worries. Thanks again, Roham, for your time. Really appreciate that and everything you've done. Obviously, it took a few days to do, get everything set up for us. So I'm sure everyone would like to say thank you. A lot of people said thank you in the chat anyways, and also thank you to everyone for attending. Yeah, means a lot, and hopefully we'll get something else set up soon. So thanks a lot for your time. Speak soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Reese. Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.